The black cat mewed happily upon being fed her usual meal for the night. It had been a couple of days, but ever since Kaminari received a call and for a favor, he was happy to oblige. He knelt by the cat and gently stroked her back before leaving her to her meal. He had learned very quickly how to treat Toka, and to his surprise, she warmed up to him very quickly.
Guess your parents will be home the day after tomorrow,
he spoke while he watched her continue to eat.
Hope I get to see you more often after that. Come to think of it, I hope I get invited.
Kaminari chuckled to himself while he wrote a brief text, sending it to 2 numbers simultaneously. With a final pet of Toka's head, Kaminari bade the cat farewell before locking the apartment door safely and soundly. He remembered his instructions when he visited the apartment a couple of days before Shinso was to leave on his mission, being shown around to the relevant spots for food and a rundown on Toka by his partner. He cracked a grin at the thought before making his way to the elevator, taking the trip back down to the ground floor where he parked his car. Denki Kaminari had dove headfirst into work for a good portion of his pro-hero career after the Public Hero Commission sought him out for specific missions. Now with a busy schedule in and out of the commission, he deserved a little regularity to embark on this task for his friends. However, that did not stop him from being accountable. He entered into the driver's seat of his car, turning to face you in the passenger seat, waiting patiently.
Success?
You asked before Kaminari strapped himself with his seatbelt.
Like always,
he replied with a grin.
Comfortable?
You raised your wrist, bound to the car door handle by a pair of handcuffs.
As usual?
You answered with a raised brow.
You still insist on giving me lackluster jewelry when I already have something high caliber down here.
Kaminari's grin turned into a nervous smile while he started the engine of his car. He was aware you spoke of the ankle bracelet you wore to keep you tracked under commission jurisdiction. Though Kaminari had sorted a deal with the commission to keep you out of the cell, it was a precaution that was a necessity. Rules had been laid to keep you under their radar even while under Kaminari's supervision. Even after you had been cooperative. For the past couple of days, you've been under Kaminari's watchful eye, at least for the most part. Your first taste of freedom besides his apartment under house arrest were these nightly visits to a friend's apartment, feeding a cat. You were impressed by his conscientious nature, especially due to his unpredictable, quirky behavior some of the time. It was an endearing side of him. Of course, he never entailed who this friend was. He'd only informed when he would be taking an extra stop.
How about a night out before I take you back to mine?
That was different.
Kaminari, are you asking me out?
You asked with a sarcastic undertone.
Out for some fun,
he replied while he pulled his car out from the curb.
I think you've been cooped in my place for a while now, and I want to show you a good time.
A good time? What's more fun than curling with a good book?
Reading that book for the 2nd time and almost finishing it for a 3rd. I've seen where you were up to.
You stared at Kaminari while he continued to drive, confident in his navigation to who knew where he was taking you. His observations of you took you by surprise, but it almost unnerved your first impressions of him, and then your perceptions afterwards. Still, you felt your lips tug into a smile, seeing that grin on his face. It was infectious.
So, where are you taking me, Wolfy?
You asked, making yourself comfortable in the passenger seat.
Another errand?
No, I think you'll enjoy yourself,
he commented.
Not sure if you've been around the world, but I'll take you there.
Like your stint in America?
You watched Kaminari's brow furrow and his smile drop, more so in confusion than upsetment. His career intrigued you. Among your books back in that cell were public records following none other than Chargebolt's rise in fame and the paths he chose to be where he is now. As odd as it were to find how observant he was of you, you needed to understand him just as much. You spotted his eyes glance at you, still confused.
If you can learn to read French in who knows how long you did in a week, I can read a few articles about you,
you explained with a smile.
Impressed?
Ironic. Bright neon lights caught the corner of your eye when he turned into the car park in front of a brightly lit building. The neon sign flickered for a few moments while you read it high above the rooftop of the building. The sound of the driver's seat door shut next to you before you spotted Kaminari with that goofy grin, his fingers pointing up at the very same sign you just read.
What?
Yes!
Kaminari whispered a shout in victory before he picked his ball from the 11th hole in the course. A hole-in-one, no less. The first one of the night from him at least. You stared at the windmill in front of you while it spun slowly. You were in the Netherlands as far as the world on this course went along. You visited New York, Egypt, Sydney, London. You were surprised to find India, and even more so, the Amazon. Out of all the places to take you out to, it was the local mini golf range. Cloud City Putt-Putt. That was a neon sign that glowed above the both of you, cascading its light slowly over the course. You had seen it a few times in Musatafu, but you had never stepped foot into it. The lights were what attracted you the most. However, every time you spotted it, you were preoccupied with other matters, some that you wished to atone.
Need a hand?
Asked Kaminari, taking you away from your state at the neon lights.
Don't get so smart,
you cooed, swinging your ball into the windmill and successfully spotting it reaching the other side of the course.
I've gotten a few eagles behind you.
You know, I never would have guessed you were a golf fan.
Well, I like to play the sport, at least this kind. And that's another eagle.
You picked up your ball while you joined Kaminari onto the 12th hole, moving from the Netherlands and entering into the Arctic, or Antarctica. You couldn't tell which, with all of the ice formations blocking your path to the hole.
You know the scores don't matter, right?
Spoke Kaminari while he laid his ball on the course.
Then why were you so happy for that last hole?
You questioned with a smirk.
Hey, I'm pretty slick, but I never get that lucky in a game of putt-putt. It's the little things.
With a knock of his club, Kaminari aimed the ball into one of 3 holes available, spotting it shoot out the other end and land safely amongst some glaciers on the course. You followed suit with your swing, finding your ball opposite his.
Besides, I'm just a little curious about you,
he continued while he traversed the fake plastic glaciers on the course.
What do you need to know?
You asked openly.
I've given the commission everything.
Well, maybe I want to learn more about you.
he pressed fervently, his tone emphasizing his inflections.
Comment connais-tu le français?
You scrutinized Kaminari's grasp of the language, still curious on how he had mysteriously learnt in a short amount of time. As much as he was reading up on your publicized life, you had caught up on his. And to your recollection, he had never traveled to Europe, never had taken up any formal classes, and didn't have a history of being anywhere close to the language, except
Je suis né là-bas.
You replied with a smug smile.
Mais je crois que tu dois prendre tout, c'est un ami?
Kaminari stopped in his tracks while his club hovered before the ball, processing what you had said. He stood for a while, frozen in time while he stared at nothing. Really.
Bonjour?
You cooed, eyeing Kaminari's state.
Are you okay?
His eyes glanced slowly towards you with a nervous smile, before he brought his attention back onto his ball, knocking it through the course and successfully reaching close to the hole at the end.
Yeah, I'm good.
He replied.
I asked a good friend of mine to help me out a bit.
Ah? Donc il parle français?
Oui.
Impressive, you thought. Whether he had only learnt a few terms to get by, or actually had some knowledge on how to string French conversely. You admired Kaminari's ability to stay calm under pressure.
Quel est son nom?
You asked while you knocked your ball, earning another score on the course.
My name?
No, your friends.
Kaminari froze in place before he rubbed the back of his neck in embarrassment. He decided to focus his attention on his ball before knocking it towards the hole, ending his round.
Aoyama.
He admitted.
He had given me a few easy terms to learn, but I guess I've been guessing what you've been saying.
Bingo.
Impressive.
Kaminari's face lit up upon hearing that word, raising a thumbs up towards you with a cheeky grin.
I knew you were impressed. But on a serious note, I really wanted to know more about your life before the virtual idol career.
Again, you scrutinized Kaminari's intentions while the both of you moved onto the next hole in the park. Coincidence or not, you spotted Kaminari's response to your scrutiny, grinning widely.
I'm just curious,
he urged.
I'll be honest, your track record is questionable. And I want to be sure who I'm dealing with. And no, I'm not wearing a wire.
Kaminari pulled at his shirt and his chest to prove he wasn't wired in any way, leaving you to continue walking in silence, trying any means to avoid you peeking down his shirt. To him, it was a hit or miss. He knew forcing you to answer questions wasn't going to yield results, but he had to try either way. There were too many things left unanswered from his end, and now, entangled with you, he wanted to know. It was that look you had before the commission took you away that ensnared him.
Can we sit first?
You asked, pointing towards a bench placed halfway between the 12th and 13th hole. Kaminari nodded, agreeing to your request, before the both of you sat next to each other with clubs in hand. You took in a deep breath, staring at the cobblestone path in front of you, wondering what, where, and how to start. You've only known Kaminari through media press releases and just general knowledge gossip about the stun gun hero, but knew very little of him. Of his intentions, his dreams, his fears. Fear. You had a few haunting you still.
Just as an aside, I'm not offended if you're wary of me.
You started, feeling that a disclaimer of sorts was needed.
I've done some terrible things, and this anklet justifies that.
You pivoted your foot to reveal the chunky piece of tech that wrapped around your ankle, emphasizing your point.
What I've already told the Commission is true. I was a part of the Paranormal Liberation Front years ago. I aided in that terrible war, in all that decimation behind the scenes, selecting certain members to heighten their quirks, like a stimulant. So, I'm sorry for any harm I may have inadvertently caused.
So, why are you targeting former or active front locations?
Asked Kaminari, catching you off guard.
How did you?
I may not look it, but I'll get down to the bottom of things if they look pretty sus.
He explained.
Not sure if the Commission had asked for your reasons.
In fact, they hadn't. You only skimmed over your activities and involvement, enough that the Commission had enough to go by. However, sitting next to you was a man who continued to dig deeper and invested in learning more.
I have to make amends for what I've done.
You answered.
The front is stronger than most people think. They may have lost the war, but that won't stop them from coming back. They're being selective, choosing participants that would fulfill their needs, and I was one of them. An early prototype.
Prototype? Like Nomu's?
Questioned Kaminari, watching your shoulders recoil from the thought.
Oh no! Not from that deranged psychopath!
You uttered with a sneer.
Even thinking about him makes me sick.
As quickly as your aversion rose from the mention of Daruma, it quickly faded into one of shame. You swiveled the club in your hands, a means of keeping you distracted while your thoughts returned on the missions you were sent out to complete. The number of people who were lost to every song you sung was a ghost that lingered, along with the woman you served.
I was there.
Started Kaminari.
I was one of the soldiers on the first wave at the front's base. I've seen what they're capable of, and it's scary. It's why I've worked so closely with the Commission, but I guess it's why they put me on this mission involving you. You're not alone when you're talking about the war.
Frank, honest, but not brutal. That was surprising. Did he really just pour a bit of his heart out?
I don't expect you to tell me a lot, but I'm holding out for it.
He continued.
For example, who's the general?
Well, he was also blunt and direct. You uttered an anxious hum, wondering what to answer. It felt like it hit too close to home.
I'd have to explain from the beginning to answer that.
You motioned.
It's complicated.
Saved by the bell, you thought, spotting Kaminari reaching for his phone to check his messages. You mulled over his question, knowing the answer but hesitant to say. There was a long history you'd have to dig up to explain yourself, but you had focused on moving forward. Nothing more, nothing less. You spotted the blonde grinning from ear to ear while he texted, wondering what he was so giddy over. Perhaps he heard good news, but it looked more like a gushing reaction to whatever he read. A partner? A lover? Significant other? He was an enigma.
Sorry.
He apologized after he had sent his response via text.
It's fine.
You chimed immediately.
Work is work?
Nah, just a friend.
He corrected before he stood up from the bench, holding out his arm.
But if you need time before you can answer my questions, I'm willing to wait. So, maybe we can continue on with our game. We've got 6 more holes to go.
He leaned in with the crook of his arm, inviting you to take it. Such a gentleman, you thought, before you gently grabbed under his arm before he helped you to your feet, leading you down the rest of the cobblestone path.
Besides, I think the next hole will be a nice trip for you,
he commented with a grin, turning the corner for you to see the tiny lights alight across what looked to be Paris. The Eiffel Tower stood tall at the end of the course, the next challenge in this game of putt-putt.
Welcome home, mon ange,
teased Kaminari with a bow.
Your move.
Despite the dreary thoughts you had earlier, a smile slowly formed on your lips before you began to laugh out loud at Kaminari's antics. At this point, you thought he was doing everything in his power to surprise you again and again. And it was working.